How do we have difficult conversations with our child? How do we prepare our children for a new diagnosis? Let's say for cancer, or prepare them for surgery, or let's say one of their friends or one of their family members was diagnosed, or let's say their actual parent was diagnosed. How do we balance the needs of a child with cancer with our other children's needs? Dr. Cheryl Book, who is the Director of Clinical and Family Services for Chai Lifeline, guides parents in these questions on a weekly basis, and she shares her wisdom in this episode. Without further ado, enjoy the episode. Raising children in general is not easy. Throw in the desire to have passionate and committed Jews. Now that's next level hard. With weekly episodes on our parenting hierarchy, you will find the answers to your biggest parenting questions and gain the best practices you need to raise the children the way you want, to raise the Jews next door. Welcome back to another episode of the Jews Next Door. We have a very special episode here today with Dr. Cheryl Book, who is the Director of Clinical and Family Services for Chai Lifeline. Hi. And really a major pleasure. Thank you so much for taking the time.
Pleasure. Pleasure is all mine.
So how do you get involved in the first place with Chai Lifeline?
So it's actually an interesting story. I actually started in Chai Lifeline as a camper.
Oh, wow.
I was about 22 years old, and I was diagnosed with Hodgkin's disease. And I was kind of encouraged very strongly by my doctor, by friends, by family friends to go to Camp Simcha, which I said, it's ridiculous. At this point, I'm too old. I'm not going, I've been a division head in other camps. Like, I don't need this. And they pushed me to go.
You were first diagnosed at 22.
I was first diagnosed at 22. And I was, at the time, applying for graduate school. I was this is not what I signed up for. What am I doing this for? And they pushed me to go. And I went to Camp Simcha for the first summer, and it was a life-changing experience for me.
Wow.
Chai Lifeline had been there throughout my journey, just for treatment, but Camp Simcha really was completely life-changing.
Wow.
And, already before graduate school, for no real reason, the truth is when I applied, in my essay, I had written that I wanted to work with kids who had cancer. But I have really, to this day, no understanding of why. I wasn't involved with kids with cancer.
Meaning before you were 20,
I used to joke that the only way I got into Camp Simcha was because I got cancer. I had no pull to get into, to camp.
That's
all my friends were going
crazy.
as counselors, things like that. I had been working, doing Yachad Shabbatones and working with developmentally disabled. It made more sense.
Right.
But for some reason I had said, this is something I might want, and had written it in my applications. But after I actually worked there, I realized that, no, this really might be what I actually want.
Wow.
And actually, after I was in camp. And so I kind of went up the ranks in camp and was a counselor at some point, became a division head, and then started interning in Chai Lifeline's crisis department. And then slowly made my way to the Director of Clinical and Family Services, which is the illness department.
Wow. It's so powerful that you're able to give back to an institution that helped you so much.
Yeah.
It's so meaningful.
Yeah. It's more than a job. Yeah. At the end of the day, it really is more than a job.
And you also can relate on such a different level because you went through it.
Right.
Wow. So tell me a little bit about your role. What do you do as the Director of Clinical Services?
Sure. So I would say there's two major parts to my job. The first part is I oversee the case management department. And the case managers are really the people who are at the forefront dealing with clients. They're helping them with whatever their daily needs are. Anything from concrete needs to emotional needs. They need food in the hospital. They're helping arrange that. They need emotional help. They need therapy. They need just answers to questions. They're trying to help them with that. So I oversee that to make sure that every client is really getting their needs met, getting their services that they need.
And you're meeting with clients also, or?
So the second part is more not necessarily always in person, sometimes over Zoom, sometimes in person, but often over the phone, is really doing anything that's of psychological nature for them. So it's really answering a lot of their questions. It's giving a lot of guidance to prepare children, let's say, before at a new diagnosis, before a surgery. At times, if it's a parent that's even diagnosed, we'll get those type of calls. We'll give guidance. Right. I go into schools. If there's a child in the school that was recently diagnosed, to talk to the classmates. I've gone into communities to talk to friends and family, members of the family and the child who's been diagnosed. And so it's really
You've got
Both
it
those
all.
two
You're
parts.
doing like
both those parts.
Wow. So
That's
you're
the
like
main.
on the like the administrative level, like doing like the back work, but
Right.
also like really like in it also
Right.
at the same time. Wow, that's
Right.
fascinating. So what would you say are the most common types of questions that you get from parents?
So definitely the guidance of how do I tell my child this
Yeah.
news and whatever that news is. And it's really, I would say it's anything that's considered bad news or
Right.
trauma, whether it's they themselves are the ones that have been diagnosed, whether it's a parent that's been diagnosed,
Sure.
whether it's their classmate that's been diagnosed, a girl, a kid in the neighborhood. So that would probably be the most common question.
So how do they? What do you advise on that one?
So it's probably longer than this, podcast
Sure.
goes, but usually I divide it into 3 parts. When you are telling any child, and again, difficult news, it doesn't have to even be illness, but really anything that's, difficult, I always suggest being open and honest. It's important that kids trust their parents and that they feel that they are people they can go to and talk to. And
Sure.
if they have questions, there's an open line of communication. I want to hear from you. I want to talk to you. I want to answer you. And I'm going to answer you honestly. And that
Right.
trust is really what they need. These are the people they're most comfortable with. These are the people they get the most reassurance from. And at the end of the day, these are the people we want them continuing to turn to.
Sure.
And to trust. So
Right.
it is important that they're open and honest, but I divide it into 3 parts. The first part is really naming it. What is this? Giving it the actual name. Use the words that they're going to overhear. If they're going to hear, you don't have to say it 100 times, but if they're going to hear the word cancer, if they're going to hear, which they will, if they're going to hear the name of the cancer, they're going to hear the words chemotherapy, radiation, surgery, whatever it is, you want them hearing it from your mouth. And not trying
Meaning
to
in that first conversation.
in that first
even?
conversation.
Really? Wow. Okay.
The second part, and this first conversation may take place over more than one time,
Right,
but usually it's, you're naming it. You're then also talking, the second part being, what are we doing about it? What's the plan? You don't have to talk about the next year, but within the
Right.
next short term, the next couple of months, what are we doing? Are we going to be, is the child having chemotherapy? Are they going to have a surgery soon? Letting them know really what to expect. And the more a child's prepared,
Right.
really the better they do.
Sure.
It's not as scary when this is what I expect. It's not as random. If the child's going to lose their hair, we let them know
Right.
they're going to lose their hair. Otherwise it's, I have cancer and now all of a sudden my hair's falling out too. What is going on with me? I'm falling
Right,
apart.
right.
As opposed to them being told in the right way of, no, it's the medication that's doing that. It's okay.
Right. Like that's actually
and
what's
that's what we
going to
expect
happen.
and we
what's
want it.
expected,
Right. And it's not a bad thing. It,
Right.
it means the medication's going in, it's doing its job. And it's really how the parents present it all. That really is what the children take in.
Sure.
So that would be part 1 and 2. And part 3 is how it affects them. So again, whether are they going to be going to school? What part of the routine is changing for them? For the other, let's say it's siblings who are hearing the same news,
Sure.
Are mommy and daddy going to still be there to take them off the bus? Are they making them lunch? If they're not, who's going to be making them lunch? Who's taking them off the bus? Who's giving them their bath at night? Letting them know their needs are still going to be met.
So you're saying this conversation is not just with the child or the adult, whatever it is, but you're saying with as a family, like kind of like a family meeting.
It could
or
be
not
that
necessarily?
we're doing this all together. Not necessarily. It
Would you
depends on
recommend that, or?
depends on, the different scenarios that
Right.
come up. Probably you're talking to the child who's sick themselves
First,
first. The other siblings, I do like when it's together. I think they give each other the support,
Right.
one another. And it also lets them know, I'm telling all of you the same thing. I'm not hiding something from
Right,
you
right.
that I'm telling your brother, and I'm not,
Sure.
and that you can talk to each other after also, if you need that support. We're all in this, we've done this, we're in this together.
Right,
That's really
right.
the main.
So you said that the main thing is to help prepare them for what they're going to experience. How do you prepare someone to go through as something as horrible and tragic and so shocking to the system as that?
Right. So you're letting them know really, again, what a typical day in the hospital is going to look like. You're letting them know that there are going to be nurses there that are going to be helping take care of them. You're letting them know that they may need to get, let's say, a shot, but I'm going to be right next to you.
Right.
And you're giving them as much as you can control in that situation. So, you're maybe asking them, you can get the shot in either arm. Do you want it in this arm or do you want it in this arm? Do you want to watch while they do it? Which we hope they say no,
Right.
Or would you like me to bring headphones, let's say, and allow you to be distracted, while it's going on.
Right. Right.
You're also letting them know if they're going to have to be in the hospital, what's that going to be? We're going to, we're supposed to stay there for X number of days. My general rule is always exaggerate. And this I tell really parents
It's great,
for anything. It's the best thing.
It's great parenting advice.
Always exaggerate so that no one's disappointed if you get to come home early.
Yeah.
You know, if you have to stay there longer, which happens, normal things happen. You know, a kid will have a low grade fever and the doctor will say, I think we should just keep her one more night. You know, that becomes much more scary, and it becomes also more like much more disappointing.
Yeah.
But if I'm coming home early, that's exciting.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah, totally.
And especially for kids who don't really have such a concept of time. A lot of times I'll use how many Shabbos are you going to have to be here? You know, but again, totally exaggerated. So if they're saying 2, you're telling them 3.
Got it.
You know, and that way, even for the kids at home, always exaggerate.
Right. And what does that conversation look like with the siblings? Meaning that's like, now you're not talking to do you have the child in the room? Do you not have the child in the room?
So generally not, you know, but I don't think it depends on the kid, you know, and if that is a kid who's pretty wants to be there, you know, pretty okay with what's going on, that's okay. If it's a very, very little kid, there's no reason to bring them into the conversation. Sure. But if it's a 10, 11-year-old kid who wants to be there with his siblings, I don't think there's a reason for sure not to, except for the fact that you want the kids to be able to ask their questions. Yeah. And sometimes, you know, and this goes like when I do it in a school, it's the same thing. I don't have the kid there for the reason of, if the kids want to ask questions that they're uncomfortable asking in front of a child who is the one who's affected, you know, you don't often get it, but you will get the question of, well, is he going to die? Right. You know, and what's going to happen? So
how do you respond to that if you know that right now the prognosis, let's say, well, we'll go both ways, right? There's the positive and then the like less, you know.
So at the end of the day, both ways, no matter what the prognosis is, we can't promise anything. You know, we're always going to be trying to be hopeful, optimistic, but realistic. And so at the end of the day, you're telling them we're doing everything we can. We have great doctors. They're in a good hospital. They are getting the best medication, and we're doing the best that we can. We're davening. We are looking into all the good options that we can. Sure. We're doing everything to make him better. Mm-hmm. We're not promising. You know, we can't promise. You're not saying that to the child. I can't promise you, but you're basically, again, you're being hopeful. You're being optimistic without that guarantee. Right. Even if the prognosis, unfortunately, is not great for right now, you're answering the child of we're doing everything we can to enrich them, make them better.
Same thing with the siblings also.
Same thing with siblings. You know, if you know the prognosis is very good, you know, and it's really not something that the doctors are talking about or thinking about, you can let them know, you know, that's not what the doctors are saying at this time. That's not what they're expecting at this time, to reassure them that it's not, again, I'm not promising it's not happening because unfortunately we don't have that ability. But at the same time, you're letting them know that, no, that doesn't seem to be what the doctors are saying or what they're expecting. Right.
So what does that actual conversation look like with the siblings? Meaning when you take the siblings in a separate room, what does that look like?
So again, same 3 parts.
Same thing.
Same 3 parts. What is it? You're giving it the name. You're naming that monster for them. You're letting them know this is not something that's contagious. You know, I think especially, I've always said that as part of the advice, but especially in the world of Corona and COVID, and when they know that, you know, we wear masks for everything, this is not something that's contagious. It's something that is rare, especially, you know, kids over the age of about 6 can understand that concept of rare. It's not something that happens all the time. The probability is it's not happening to you, right? Again, we're not promising that it's not, but we're letting them know, you know, the probability is it will not be happening to you as well. Yeah. Letting them know it's no one's fault. This is definitely not something that anyone did that caused this. It's not a punishment in any way. It's really something that for whatever reason, Hashem has decided that this is what he wants. Kids happen to be very accepting. And you'll find that the younger they are, we as adults have a lot more questions and we question a lot more, you know, really of why is this happening and how did this happen? But in reality, kids are pretty accepting. Really? And if you tell them like, this is what Hashem wants, we don't know why, but this is what he decided. A young child will kind of say,
they're more...
Okay. Right. You know,
a teen is probably a little less.
A teen, yeah. Once you get to like the 13-year-old age, they start asking a lot more of the why are bad things happening to good people.
So what do you respond in this type of situation? I mean, obviously it's a
much bigger,
it's a much bigger question.
The short answer is that it's a good question. And we don't have the right answers. You know, Moshe Rabbeinu wanted that same answer, and he didn't get it. That's what
I always tell my students ask me this in high school all the time, and you know,
right at the end of the day, we don't have the answer. Right. We know that all we do know is Hashem does love each one of us, and we do believe that this is not something that is a punishment. It's something that in some world that we don't understand, in some way that we don't understand, it is for good. It's a concept that's bigger than us.
Totally.
And I think that that's all we can do.
Right.
If you're looking for a great way to have some good, clean, kosher fun with your children through the powerful effect of music, look no further, because J Karaoke is here. J Karaoke gives one and all the platform to belt out their favorite tunes from a library of thousands of Jewish songs, hundreds of artists and genres across multiple decades of incredible Jewish music. Personally, I know that I love singing. I love it. I love karaoke, but I was really never able to get into it because it wasn't the Jewish songs. And that's where J Karaoke comes in with their huge selection, from the latest hits to the classics. They even have nursery rhymes for your little ones. And with features like key changes to help you sing, to make you more comfortable as you're singing, and speeding it up or slowing down the song, they have really thought of everything. To enjoy Jewish karaoke your way, all you need to do is head to jkaraoke.com. Choose a subscription that fits for you. And to make it even more fun, you could purchase their state-of-art karaoke kit, which gives you the feeling as if you are today's top singer. You can insert whoever you feel it is. Connect your kit to any device, like it could be a laptop, a computer, a tablet, whatever it is, and you plug in your speaker, plug in your J Karaoke microphone, and you sing away. It's as easy as that. That's all it is. And it's really fun. I checked out their website. It really looks amazing. They have an incredible amount of song selection. Anything you want. They got Thank You Hashem. They got Mordechai Shapiro. They really got it all. You can subscribe monthly for just $4.99 a month, yearly for $49.99. And we have a special deal here for you. For any of our listeners, if you use the code Jews Next Door, DOR, you get an additional 10% off. And if you don't want your children to be using a device with internet, J Karaoke's got you covered. You can download the app onto your desktop. Once you have it up, turn off the internet, let them sing all day long without the internet. Check out J Karaoke today and let the fun begin.
So how do you advise parents to balance, let's say, the needs of, they have their child who is, let's say, diagnosed, with the rest of their, however large their family is, they have other children who have other needs. How do they balance that?
Right. So it's a very, very hard thing. We have many parents who've kind of said, I don't know how to cut myself in half. And that's really what they want to do and need to do. Yeah. Again, each family is going to be different, and the dynamics of the family and the ages of the other children are going to be different. But ultimately, I think it starts by the parents recognizing you're doing the best you can. Mm-hmm. And that's really like step one is this is a very difficult situation and you're really doing the best you can. You're really doing the best for all your children. You're given what you're dealing with, and letting them know that wherever they are, whether it's at home or whether it is in the hospital, knowing that they're leaving the other side with good, loving, competent people. It may not be them, which is hard for them to deal with. But at the end of the day, again, given what I'm dealing with, this is the best I can do. And I know, and I'm confident that I'm leaving them with people who are loving and who do love them and who are competent, and good. And so to take a little bit of that pressure and that guilt, I can't be in both places. So as long as I know that my child's being taken care of, in the hospital, one of the things that Chai Lifeline offers are volunteers. Our volunteers are amazing, and
amazing.
The kids tend to love the volunteers. Sometimes the parents, to the point where they're like, go home, I'm okay, But again, I'm leaving them with competent people. I'm leaving them with people who really love them and who are going to give them the best love that they can. It's not me, but it's best. Right. I also think it goes a lot to quality, not necessarily quantity, and I think that working parents can relate to this as well. The idea of it's not so important as how many hours you're with them, but really
when you're with them,
you're really there. And so I think for let's say the siblings, especially, it's really being there when you're there, and recognizing, again, there's somebody good taking care of my other child. I'm here now meant to be with the sibling. I'm going to be with the sibling. Right. I tell parents it doesn't have to be major things that you're doing with them. Take them with you to the grocery store. That one-on-one time really makes them feel special. And it doesn't matter. That doesn't have to be that I'm taking them on a major trip. It really can be. I'm going to Amazing Savings. I'm going to grocery. Come with me. I'd really love you to come with me. Sure. And one of the main things I tell parents to tell or ask the child, we very quickly will say to a kid, and understandably, when the kid is complaining, let's say, you're never home, I never see you, or I'm upset that you're not doing this for me. We get this a lot around like Yom Tovim time, especially from like the 12-year-old girls. Why are you not taking me Pesach shopping? And we kind of look at them going, are you serious?
Do you know what's going on?
Do you know what's going on? Your brother's so not feeling well. Your brother's miserable. He's in the hospital. What do? We end up kind of just making them feel bad on top of what they're feeling bad. What they're really saying is, I miss my mother. I want my mother around. And so instead of saying to a child, don't you see what your brother's going through? How could you say that when you really say, you know what, this is really hard for you. How's this doing? You really recognize their part of this Nisayon, their part of this whole journey. And they do have a role, and their life was also just, not as physically pained, but their life was just flipped upside down on its head also.
Right.
Their mother and their father who are usually home, or their mother who usually is around, at least at night, is not around all the time, or not as focused, even if she's around and does have a lot of other things to deal with. And so it's important that you really do look at them as, what's your part in this? How are you doing?
Like what you were saying before, of like, you're doing the best you can. And therefore it's not that they're saying you're a bad parent. It's that they're just expressing how much they miss you and love you. It's not more than that. And it's not a reflection of you as a parent that you're a bad parent just because you're tending to what
you're doing the
what
best you can with what you have, and I think it's validating also their feelings.
Right.
At the end of the day, I wish I could be here also, but then you're helping them to find, as their role model, kind of what are the coping that you can do, so I wish I was here. You know what? I can't be here every night. Maybe we can make a time, and I wouldn't make it a specific time, give it a window because that's the exact time that you're supposed to talk to them is the exact time the doctor walks in. But if you make a window of, you know what, we're just going to check base. I'm going to call in, we're going to check, see how things are going, we'll see how school is, it could be over FaceTime, it could be a phone call, it could be whatever it is, but just showing them I'm still here, to even smaller symbols, you look at the moon, I'll look at the moon. We both know that like when we look at that, we're thinking of each other, but just letting them know I'm still here for you. Right. If you need me, you can call me as soon as I have the ability. I may not that minute, giving them realistic expectations, but as soon as I do, know that I want to, but as soon as I have that opportunity, I'm going to call you. I'm going to connect with you.
That's a great idea. Are there other coping mechanisms that you'd recommend, or just telling them that, having like a set time is more or less
that's usually it.
Need,
but again, realizing also every kid copes differently, every adult copes differently. Sure. And so ultimately it's allowing them to find their way. I get the question all the time, my kid's not talking. They're not really telling me how they feel. And that could be the child who's sick. It could be the sibling. They're not telling me. And my first question always is, were they a talker before this? When they come home from school, are they the ones who are telling you every detail of what happened and which teacher was so annoying and which, kid hit them and which kid didn't bring snack and if they're that kid and they're not talking, now I'm a little concerned.
Okay. Right.
If it's the kid who, how was school? Fine. And goes up to their room. I'm really not concerned. That's who they are. They're not a talker, but find that way to express it. And it doesn't have to be in talking. It can be for some kids, it's drawing. For some kids, it could be taking a ball and throwing it against a wall. It's just getting it out in some way. There are kids who go out and just play basketball, and that's what they do to express, and that's fine. It's just letting them know, I am here. I'm not pushing you to talk. I am here. I would love to hear from you if you do want to talk. But ultimately, I'm just going to help you find what's your way.
Whatever you need.
No, also, they don't always talk to their parents. It's a big surprise. But at the end of the day, especially teenagers, kind of feel like you're going through enough. I don't need to tell you. Yeah. And so you want to encourage them to know there's nothing you really are going to ask me I probably haven't thought of. There's probably nothing that you're going to ask me that, I'm not already thinking of. I actually enjoy it when you talk to me because it makes me feel like I kind of have an idea of where you are. But nothing you're going to ask me is going to make me more upset or sad. Like,
it's interesting because like what you just said of that to give over the notion that nothing you're going to ask me, I haven't thought of, but what if like there's a time when a teen or, like a teen who's already like, thinking a little more deeply is asking a question and they're like, and the parents just like, I don't even know what to say right now. Yeah. Like, what do you do in that situation?
So you're allowed to say, I don't know. I think actually it makes you very real that we don't have the answers, but you're letting them know if it's a question that really can be answered, then the answer is, you know what? I don't know. It's a really good question. I'm going to try to find out for you. And then actually coming back and giving them an answer, if they're asking something about, let's say, the specifics of how the treatment's working, especially you'll get that a lot with boys, with like 10, 11, 12-year-old boys. They get very into the exact science of how things work.
Interesting.
It's not a gruesome thing. It's just really how they work. It's kind of the same way they like science experiments. So then you're answering them, you know what? I don't know. I'm going to find out and I'm going to get back to you. That again, builds up that trust. If it's a question like why do bad things happen? You're allowed to say, you know what? I don't know. I think the same question. I have the same question. I don't really know the answer. Sometimes get a Rev involved, but at other times you're allowed to say, you know what? We don't have the answer. It's something we all grapple with, but we don't have the answer.
So I know that, oftentimes a a child who, let's say, is diagnosed will receive a lot of, cool things or extra special, whatever, different, like either, sometimes devices, or like it could be like they'll get an iPad when like the family before didn't want to have an iPad, or they'll have some like really cool trips or whatever it is. And so, how do you deal with the fact that the other children, the siblings are feeling jealous, or,
Sure.
What do you deal with that?
Sure. So again, I wouldn't go with the, don't you see how miserable your brother is?
Right.
I don't think that's the right plan. But we tell parents in general, as far as the stuff that the kids are getting, you don't want to create a monster, so everything needs a balance.
Mm-hmm.
Kids do well with structure. Kids do well with rules. It's okay to still put rules in place here. We have an iPad for during treatment. If it's not something we usually use, it's only for while undergoing treatment.
That's okay. So meaning like,
it's okay to give rules. It's okay to have discipline. It makes kids feel secure when there are rules. When there's too much, just everything kind of goes. Very often, it could give this subconscious message of, we don't really think anything's happening here. The normal rules are out the window. Things are totally hefker. We don't necessarily believe that there's an after here, because right now, just do it. We need to give you everything because there's not much hope that we're going to have a normal life again. When you give the structure of like, no, Amrit Hashem, you're going to get better, and you're not going to be allowed to be using that iPad so often.
Right.
You can use it when you really need it. It's a very different message to a child.
But how do you define need it for that child? Because they could say, well, I need it right now.
Right. So I think, again, it has to do with making clear boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
When you're in the hospital, that's a time when you're allowed to use it.
Mm-hmm.
When you're undergoing a treatment, you're allowed to be using it. Again, monitoring, obviously, what they're still doing with it.
Sure.
Things like that. But I think for the siblings, I think it is reminding them, though, that there are still rules.
Mm-hmm.
It also might be where you do loosen up a little bit with some of the siblings on certain things. If the child is allowed to be watching at home, let's say, because they are getting some IV at home, you might want to think about saying to the other kid, if you'd like to watch with him for a little bit, you can do that as well.
Sure.
Because you don't want everything to be only that one child.
Sure.
Again, we're not looking to create this monster after that we have to deal with. And we've had that.
How do you deal with that? Meaning how do you reparent? Like you've created even if it wasn't even if you didn't let it go out of control, there's something that you have to rein in a little bit.
So there is a little bit of a weaning process, there definitely is a reminder to kids that Baruch Hashem, you're better now and you're doing well, and that the old rules are starting to apply again.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times I'll say, just put a time limit on what you're doing. We have a lot of the question of the kid comes into my bed every night. And at what point, how do I get them to start realizing, no, you could be in your own bed?
Right.
Use a definitive time. It's okay to say from now until whatever the next yontif coming up, or some sort of a marker that's coming up. From now until winter break, you can stay here. But at that point, we're going back to a room. Kind of prepares them of like, things are going back to normal soon, but allows them to have that time to get used to it, and then that time to kind of prepare for it. And
shifting focuses a little bit.
Sure.
How can parents prepare, let's say, a friend of a child to, or is that the job of the child's parents, or or the friend's parents to prepare them of, how to interact, what to say, how to react?
It's usually the parent of the actual child. Not meaning the parent of the sick child, but meaning my child's a classmate of your child, and unfortunately, I have to talk to my kid. I'm going to talk to my kid.
Right.
At the end of the day, again, you're their most reassuring. You're their safety.
Totally.
They're going to be most comfortable with you, and they're going to be most comfortable with you to ask their questions. We do this a lot in school interventions, where we will go into the school and we'll talk. And almost always what I tell people is, if you ask the child what they want to be treated normally. And they want you to look at them as the same way you looked at them before. Mm-hmm. Yes, there might be times where they're not feeling up to playing with you. They might not be in the best mood, but they want their friends, and they want you to look at you as, if they were funny before, they're probably still funny now. Might have a few moments where, again, they're not in the best mood, but at the end of the day, they're still the same person. And they want to be looked at as the same person.
Sure.
And that really, you take the cue from the kid. Mm-hmm. If the kid seems to want to talk about everything but what they're going through, go with that.
Right.
It's not weird. It's not strange. They want to hear about school. Talk about school. They want to know what they want to feel like they're still in the loop. They want to feel like they're still, know what's going on.
Right. They don't want everyone to be looking at them and feeling like, oh, I'm different.
Right. Exactly. They want to really be like everyone else. And they want to feel like they know what's still happening so that much time when they do return, all right, I remember that story. I heard about it. A lot of times kids are scared that they're going to feel like they're missing school. Or if I talk about that trip we went on, they're going to feel so bad that they were left out. And there are some kids who are like that, but most, I would say, do really actually want to hear about it.
Interesting. So the parents telling their child, we know that your friend is going through this. Treat them normally.
Treat them normally.
And that's the main message.
Treat them normally. And the rule of thumb basically is if you were their best friend before, you're going to be their best friend now. You're going to continue to, you can reach out. I always tell people call again an hour or half hour as you're about to leave the house to go visit. If you have already made the plan, just call again just to check in, to make sure they're really actually up to it, because things can change. You made the plan at 10 o'clock in the morning. It's now 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Things can have changed. But if you're the best friend, keep going with that. If you're not really the best friend, you're an acquaintance. I know him from school. He's in my class. I say hello when I see him, but he's not my best friend.
You don't become
now.
The best
probably
friend.
not the time. It makes it a little uncomfortable. Nobody wants to be the Nebuch case in the class.
Sure.
With little kids, you'll kind of say, nobody wants to hear, I'm going to give you my snack because you have cancer.
Right.
But for older kids, nobody wants to feel as if all of a sudden the coolest kid in the class is calling them when you never looked at me before just because, I had cancer. That makes you feel definitely a little bit more different.
Totally. Sometimes a child can, from this process or during this process, become, let's say, a little more needy, right? So how do parents, I guess, strengthen themselves to be able to deal with that? Obviously that's even when you're not in this process, but I feel like kal v'chomer, when you're dealing with this, it's a lot.
Right. So we definitely have this a lot with younger kids, especially, but we do have even almost I don't want to say regression in older kids who do start to need their parents, become more dependent on their parents, a little clingier to their parents. It's really normal. And I think recognizing that it's very normal is the first step. For parents, I think when they get so nervous, why is my kid coming into my bed all of a sudden? I've gotten calls where people say, I think my daughter needs a therapist. This is medical trauma because she's gone, she comes into my bed every night and she's scared. No, it's really normal.
Right.
She's 8 years old and she's going through treatment and she wants to be near you because when she doesn't feel well, she wants to be near you. And that could still happen with a 12, 13, 15, 16-year-old who at the end of the day, I'm scared, and recognizing that this is, I'm scared. It's their way of saying, I'm feeling a little out of control. You're my rock. You're my person that I feel most comfortable with and my strength from. I want to be able to be near you because you make me feel calm. You make me feel a little bit more secure. So firstly, it's recognizing that. Secondly, again, it could be putting in some of those boundaries. At the end of the day, it's allowing them to be as independent as they can be, making sure that you're not doing everything for them. You're not treating that 16-year-old as if she can't do anything when she's not feeling well and she really is having a hard time getting dressed because she's very weak and she is. And yes, you're helping. At the same time, when she's doing good, you're encouraging her. Go be with your friends. Go do the normal things that you used to enjoy, even if she doesn't want to. In the beginning, similar to what I was saying about even myself, at 22 years old, I didn't need my parents to be doing a lot of these things for me. And what was important was them encouraging, go be normal. Yes, go to graduate school. Go to your interview. Go do what you're supposed to do, even though at that point you're going, no, but I don't think I should. I don't think I need to. They're encouraging that. It does tell a kid, you know what? You're right. I don't want to, but once I start doing it, I'm going to start realizing, oh, I do like this. This was stuff that I did enjoy.
Totally.
And I want to do it again.
Yeah. And also, on the same topic of parents strengthening themselves, how does a parent prepare themselves to be able to do some the really hard things like holding their child down for treatment or I don't know, I'm sure there are other examples, but that's just the first thing that comes to mind.
So I don't even know that it's a preparing. I think that most parents just end up realizing they've done things that they never expected they could. They find an inner strength that they never thought. We've had parents who've said, I could never handle vomit until this. And I'm literally helping my kid over the toilet, or I would never drive into the city and I'm driving into the city every day, things like that, where I think it goes back to that old, saying of I never knew how strong I was until I had no other choice.
Sure.
I think that's kind of what happens. I don't even think it's a preparing. I really think it's more just people tend to step up to the plate when they need to and when they have no other choice, but to. Totally.
Everything we've been speaking about so far has mostly been, when a child is diagnosed. How does this change, let's say, when a parent is diagnosed? Does this change? Does anything of this change? Or
so Again, I think the conversation is pretty much very similar.
Okay.
Obviously, what changes is that main person may not be available to be doing things, so that how it affects the child might be, very different. If that's the parent who mainly did homework, if that's the parent who really, again, was the main homemaker or the main breadwinner in the family, obviously all that, changes things. But I think overall, the conversation stays pretty much similar. And that feeling just of that open, honest communication is really what I would say is the key to all these, situations. It's allowing them to know, come talk to us. We want to talk. You really might have the situation where especially the teenager kind of goes, they're so involved here. How can I tell my issues on top of everything that my father's going through? But it's important to let them know, no, even if you don't want to talk to me, let me tell you who are people around who you can talk to.
Totally.
Giving them the ability to know, your uncle is really there for you as well. The rabbi in the community is there for you as well. Your rebbes in school, school are there, which is another point. Very important to let the school know. Always let the school know what is happening. We have this a lot where parents say, but so I really have to tell the school. And I said,
why would a parent not want to tell the school?
I'm not trying to get this out there. I'm trying to keep it a little bit more private, whatever the reason.
And you're saying tell the school that way.
Schools at the end of the day is the eyes and the ears for you. That's their safe place for, most kids. They actually appreciate going to school at this time because it's 8 hours of the day. I don't have to really think about what's going on at home.
Sure.
But the person who's spending the most time with your child probably is their teacher or their principal or, the people in the school.
Sure.
And they're going to be the first ones to notice that child is acting a little bit different. That very outgoing kid is becoming very introverted, or that very well-behaved child is totally acting out, or, he's come in with no socks on for the last week, little things that we just may not pick up on.
Sure.
And, this way, at least they know why.
Right.
And they know, let me reach out to the family, just let them know what's going on. My kid's falling asleep on the desk, why? Why?
Totally. Are there any things that within this topic that parents don't necessarily even think to ask or don't even think to prepare themselves for?
I'd say the one thing that we haven't actually touched on, and I think most parents don't go to right away to ask about, is the relationship between husband and wife. And the real relationship that the parents themselves are having.
That's a very important point. Yeah.
At the end of the day, parents very often think we're going through the same thing. We're dealing with the same thing. We're supposed to cope the same way. I would say that's one area that even if they don't bring up, I do try to usually mention, especially in that first phone call, of just recognize that as much as you and your spouse both have a child who is sick, your experience is not 100% the same.
Sure.
Your relationship with that child is different. Your role in that child's life is different.
Sure.
Especially if the husband, let's say in a more stereotypical family, if the husband is more the breadwinner, the mother has been more the caretaker, you have very different roles. And for the father, it may be also I'm going off to work every day, and yet I'm leaving my wife to take care of everything that's going on at home. I'm leaving her to be in the hospital all day. I'm not seeing it every day. He's feeling guilty for not being there. Yet at the same time, the wife's feeling like he's not there.
Right.
And I have to deal with this every day and you don't. So recognizing that you're both not necessarily going to cope exactly the same. Also recognizing as much as you're going to be a support to each other, you may not be the perfect support for each other, and then it's okay to be there as a couple, and to be there. We both love each other. We're both supporting each other. We're both in this together. But at the same time, their main support be somebody outside of the two of them.
Right. Would you recommend that more so?
Depends on the family, but very often it just is what ends up happening is that the best person for them is their best friend, or is a family member, or is somebody outside who really is their sounding board, as opposed to that person who's really in it.
Totally.
With them.
Totally. That's a great point. Any final message?
I think the final message is really that people are stronger than they think, and that these situations happen, and it's a matter of really being honest with yourself of what your needs are. Especially as a parent, it's recognizing that you do need to take care of yourself as well. And in order to be able to be there for your child, you need to take those small little breaks and it could be walking around the block. It doesn't have to be something major. It can be going home for a couple of hours during the day, even if you've been by your child's side for the last, week and a half, month and a half. It's important to take those moments to take care of yourself so you can be there for your child, and take the help. Take the help, whether it's from Chai Lifeline, whether it's from family. Take the help of people offering, because there's a time and a place, Meretz Hashem, you'll give it back and you'll do again for others. But at this time, it's helpful. You need it. Take the help. People want to give it. It makes them feel good. So you're really doing a favor to them too. But definitely take the help so that you can be there for your sick child, for your spouse,
right,
and for your other children,
wow,
which is important.
Amazing. Thank you so much. This is
Pleasure.
So insightful, and really appreciate your time.
Pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of The Jews Next Door. I hope you enjoyed as much as I did. I'd love to hear your takeaways. Reach out to us. Reach out to me at yair@jenoff.org, hi@jenoff.org. You can check us out on the website. You could leave a question there. We'd love to be in touch. Please be in touch. Check us out on Instagram at Parenting the Jews Next Door. Hit me up on Twitter at Yair Menshel. And we're on TikTok now too. We have some great content, a lot of really great insights into parenting, tips, parenting pointers, reaction videos, and quotes. We have a lot going on. We have a lot of articles. You want to check it out. Check it out at jenoff.org. You won't be sorry you did. And I look forward to hearing from you. And if you haven't yet subscribed to the podcast, make sure you subscribe and share it with your family and friends. Looking forward to another great episode next week.